Tell the world we are Liverpool, champions of England.
We've conquered all of Europe. We're never gonna stop. From Palestine to Turkey, we've won the fucking lot. But Paisley and the Shankly, the fields of Anfield gold. We are unsupported, and we come from Liverpool.
G'day everybody, welcome to the Down Under show. This is a post-Burnley reaction show. Obviously, we've got all the boys from Australia here, all the lads from Down Under. We got Pete, we got Nick, and we got Steve. How is everybody? I'll start with you, Pete. You look happy. I bet you have an Asahi on you.
A what?
Today's broadcast is brought to you by Asahi Beer. Asahi Beer.
Yeah, George, when Liverpool win, it's always good, especially in this lockdown that continues and it's never going to end. So as long as Liverpool keep winning, the lockdown is just that little bit better. So, hopefully we beat Chelsea this week and continue that good mood.
Absolutely. Nick, you got anything on you? You've come from a birthday shindig. Is it your birthday?
No, it's my mum's 50th birthday today. So just had a cousins and doing all the Zoom lockdown birthdays and everyone singing happy birthday out of tune and out of sync. And it was, fantastic. So the audio engineer's wet dream, that is. But yeah, that's where it's come from. So yes, I don't have any Asahi or anything fancy in front of me. Let's just imagine that I'm drinking a nice scotch right here. So we'll just say that.
You're drinking the sweet nectar of victory. That's all you need. You don't need any other additional liquids. You just need that sweet victory. Steve, how you going, mate?
Yeah, really good, but I've not got a drink on me, so I'm letting the team down.
I've got water, so that's all I've got. I just had a nice stir fry meal, but it's actually prepped me very nicely for another win, which is fantastic. We've got the mighty boys in red have done it again. Hold on, that's not actually the score. I'm going to change that. But it was a 2-0 victory. Pete and I we said something along the lines of between 2 and 4. So 3 would have been good, but it was Liverpool 2, Burnley 0. It was a game that kind of went a little bit according to what we were saying, Pete. I will start with you because it was everything we expected from Burnley. The only reason I bring that up is because it kind of dictates how Liverpool approached the game. It was a little bit of a, pardon my French, a shit fight. We'll bring up later that Jurgen Klopp likened it to a wrestling match. But Burnley were going long and, to show that Liverpool can counter something like that, this early into the season shows they've learnt from their mistakes last year.
I mean, yeah, the way they started, it was almost like they started defending first. And then we kind of asked each other, we go, well, didn't he say they're going to come attack us? That's the best way to defend Liverpool. And then all of a sudden they started to just get more confidence. They started creating chances at goal. And it almost, that one little period there, I can't remember what minute it was in between, but it almost looked like they were going to score with every attempt. There was that moment with Alexander-Arnold on the line, and there was a few other chances there as well. But nothing, I guess, out the norm from them. It was that long direct ball to their target man, then playing off him. And once they played off him, get it wide as soon as possible for a cross in the box. I think that's something that we all expected. And yeah, like you said, we dealt really, really well with it for most of the game. And we actually ended up scoring from something very similar, where they were trying to attack us and we actually countered them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Chris Welch. He's joined us here. Hi, lads. Another good win. Also, he was in good form last week with the chatter about Naby Keita. We will be getting on to Naby Keita pretty shortly. But his certificate should be delivered to Naby Keita for taking the injury-free vaccine before the game. So we know Naby is not an anti-vaxxer because he took that injury-free vaccine. That's really good. Played another 80 minutes. Pigs must be flying in the sky at the moment. Probably. I think it's probably, we can kind of say something like this. I like Naby Keita, but going on to the whole feel of the game, Steve, what what Pete was saying there, that they hit us kind of early. Now, do you think that is us genuinely being tested by a not a decent side, like they're a Premier League football club, or is it are Liverpool kind of just happy to sit back and wait for an opportunity to counter? Because that's something me and Pete noticed in the pre-game show. We were kind of like, is Liverpool's best chance at these going to be a counter-attack? We've also seen in the past very, very quickly, teams like Burnley, these lower teams, they come out first 15, try to get an early goal and then sit back. It kind of felt like that from Burnley. Do you think we should give them credit for that early attacking spree, or is it pretty standard?
I was a bit surprised, actually. I expected them to come at us in various stages, but there was a period, Pete just mentioned it there. I think it was around like the 15th to 20th minute before we scored, where they just kept coming at us. And I think I messaged you guys in the group just to say I've never seen Burnley play with such intensity and press so high. And I thought, surely they're going to tire soon. But you mentioned it there, George. I don't know if it was we were just looking to soak it up and then catch them on the counter. It'd be easy to say that if that was the case, because that's what we did. Like, I think there was the incident where they had the penalty appeal. Trent brought someone down, and then within 10 seconds, it's in the back of the net at the other end. But I think Burnley came at us and tried to test us and tried to go for us early. I think tried to take advantage of a bit of the uncertainty with Van Dijk's fitness, a bit of whether he's going to be up to the physical test. And I mean, he passed it. We might come onto that a bit later, but I think give credit to Burnley for that little period where they went at us, because I'd love to say it was all comfortable and I thought we'd do it, but there was a little 5-minute period there where I was thinking, look, we need to step it up now because we're just inviting them on a little bit. But no, we rode the storm and then caught them on the counter, as you've been calling for, George, and it was pretty smooth sailing from there.
Nick, I want to just get your quick thoughts on the game, considering all of that. Do you think also, considering next week we do have Chelsea, we've got someone like Lukaku who's going to be a big presence. Burnley did hit us long a lot of the time during the game. Do you think it was fairly comfortable from Liverpool?
Yes and no. I mean, we had this discussion as well in our group chat. Who's going to start at the back? Is it going to be Kanate? Is it going to be Gomez? But we sort of saw that it was going to be Van Dijk and Matip again. And in terms of the long ball deliveries, yeah, it's Burnley. Chris Wood is a pain in the ass. McNeil, I thought, was decent on his left side or right side, whichever side he was playing on for them. He looked pretty tricky at moments. Ashley Barnes as well. You never know what you're going to get with him. Sometimes he might throw himself into Allison and fall over and get himself a penalty again, but that's from last season now. But the long ball situation, we did say that it was you guys said it in your tactical episode that when the long balls come in, we're pretty confident that Van Dijk and Matip are going to be able to clear anything that comes their way. So there's no issue there because they are both very tall players. Van Dijk is much more demanding. He's called the Colossus for a reason. Matip does look like he's going to fall apart at any moment because it is what it is. He's got that lankiness about him. He looks like he's going to trip over his own legs, but he manages to get by all the time, which gives me heart palpitations every now and again. And a lot of people would be saying that Lukaku's coming next week. How are we going to go about it? Are we going to have Van Dijk man marking Lukaku, or is it going to be someone else to come in? Is Kanate maybe going to get a start against Lukaku? Would you even play someone in their first Premier League match against someone like Lukaku, who's coming back to the Prem? He's off the mark already. Okay, it was Arsenal. Ha, ha, ha. Very, very funny. But still, he's got his goal. He's going to be back. He's going to be in amongst that goal tally now because he's got the experience from playing overseas. Yes, he was at Everton, United, Inter Milan. He's back in the Premier League again. Now we're going to have to see if he's really matured as a striker. But back to that point, in defense, I don't know. Do you start someone like a Kanate in this next game? Because Matip has played all right. And what's this now, Pete? You're probably across the numbers. Is this his 5th straight game for us, pre-season and at the start of the Premier League?
Yeah, it's a world record. Yeah.
Naby's taking injury vaccines. Matip is completing 5 games in a row. We've got Henderson back. Harvey Elliott's going gangbusters. Mane's got his goal. Our defense is looking good again. But against someone like Chelsea, and Chelsea, they're looking pretty good. Some people have tipped them to be up there challenging City. No one's looking at us realistically, which I think works in our favor. But back to the main point, to go full circle again, I don't know, man. If you're going to play these two guys against Lukaku, you're probably thinking that Van Dijk's going to be the one because Lukaku can run over Matip. If they're going to be playing balls along the grounds, I don't see Matip winning those. In the air, there's maybe a chance.
I'll add to that, George, if you want. Your comment before the whole Lukaku thing, I think it's a good point, but I also think that Burnley was almost the perfect warm-up for Lukaku, if that makes sense, because Lukaku is a back-to-goal, play off the last man, hold up play, link people involved, turn and get in the box. And that's something that we experienced with Burnley. And I was thinking about it during the game. I was thinking this is the perfect warm-up match. Okay, the quality of teams are completely different. One can win the league and Champions League winner. The other one will fight to stay in the league. But in terms of target man and the way they feed that person up front, it's almost identical in a way. Of course, the quality behind them is different. But George, you and I were both at Anfield when Lukaku played against Van Dijk when he was at Manchester United. You saw what Van Dijk did to him then. He put him in his pocket and he carried him everywhere he went, like a dog on a leash, just that you follow me now. And it was when I look at Lukaku's quality and one of the best strikers in the world, and he has probably gotten better since then. And yes, Van Dijk has just come back from the injury, but put Van Dijk on Lukaku, no problem.
And it's also really good is that on the other side, we don't have Dejan Lovren trying to win 600 battles, try and, save some face for whatever. I mean, I loved Lovren. We could have really used him last season. But if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if it's Ibrahimovic or Lukaku. I actually want to say it's Lukaku, but I could be wrong about that. But either way, it's a physical striker. Is it not against Manchester United? They play that ball over the top, and it's Lovren going in to try and win the header. This is about 3 years ago, mate. It was Lukaku, and Lovren gets stooged there, and then the ball goes over. I think it gets to Rashford. Rashford does the Ronaldo chop on his left foot and then gets past Trent and then puts it right, bottom right.
That was at Old Trafford, yeah.
That was at Old Trafford. So that's that. If that was Lukaku, and Pete, you're pretty confident it was, that's kind of what he can do. However, we don't have Lovren doing that sort of stuff anymore. Like you said in the pre-show, Pete, pre-Burnley, Matip does not get enough credit for his aerial dominance. Maybe he does. I'm not sure. But everyone talks about Van Dijk. But what's great is that they can't play off the weakness of the other defender. Lovren wasn't bad in the air. It's just that when there was a player who was designated to play on him, he tried to prove them wrong. We've talked about that with, maybe Joe Gomez doing it with Raheem Sterling a few times. It's about having that maturity and that world-class stature about yourself to not get into those dogfights. How many players have we seen try to get on Van Dijk? And he just never lets them get into his head. And that's what's important. I think Matip's the same. I mean, he'll do his weird, no context, Joel Matip, weird flailing his arms and screaming at people and doing,
Did you not see that concussion at some point towards the end of the match there? Did you not just see him wobbling about the place? And
copped the ball square in the head.
And he just went all over the shop.
Yeah, copped it straight in the head and just collapsed, and he got back up again and then he was still holding his head after. It's like, bro, you are clearly not in the right frame of mind. What are you doing standing up? Sit down.
But the ball was at the left and he starts walking to the right. It's like, where are you going? It's that way.
Yeah, he started doing that. I did want to bring it up because I thought maybe, if the guy's kind of in danger, I don't want to make fun of it. But I mean, he's okay now. Maybe he'll have a laugh about it. Very quickly, just want to have no, hold on. I just wanted to say g'day to Styles. Good to see you, lads. Think Burnley very much a momentum side, poor pressure on in spells. We saw that. And I think the major spell in the game is obviously the first 15. And that's, again, I point back to Klopp's either first or second season in charge. We draw against Tottenham, we get these good results. I think it's Burnley that beat us 4-2 or something like that. And it's Burnley, the ones that were kind of, on Klopp's mind, and they were kind of giving him the shits back then. And it was an early job. We've got one of our members on the Red Sea podcast, morning / evening, gents. Yeah, I think it's morning over there in the UK. So g'day to the Southern Scouser there. We've got Jericho coming on here very quickly. Small teams are going to come at us for the first few weeks until they've realized they've got to go back to parking the bus again. That's a really, really interesting point. And Pete, we've kind of discussed that a little bit in our preseason chat about the fact that, Liverpool kind of last season had this mixture of facing these deep sides, but also these sides going, I think we can get at Liverpool. That's the most perfect thing for us. I mean, if they start thinking they can kind of come at us again, that's how Burnley get punished. Trent gets the ball. It's a penalty shout. We go the other end and it's a goal, within 15 seconds.
Yeah, it's almost, I feel sorry for them because we'll probably attack them maybe 5 times in 90 minutes. And the rest will try and see if we can jag anything else in between. And one of those 5 times you're going to probably concede with the way we counter. I mean, Norwich conceded the same way, Burnley the same. And Chelsea's an interesting one. I'm sure we'll get into that a bit later on. But the way they kind of set up, maybe we could score a counter-attack goal the way they set up, especially in their 3-5-2 on attack. So maybe counter-attack for us is the best way forward this season, that is.
Steve, I want to ask you a little bit about what you've thought about Naby Keita. We did bring it up at the beginning. We had a bit of a joke there from one of our regulars, Chris Welch, about he's taken the injury-free vaccine. There's something that me and Pete were talking about off air. It's the fact that I mean, there's only 2 games for Naby Keita, only 2 games, but it's. Is there maybe because he's not being asked to do all the high intensity attacking work that he's used to? We were using the example, me and Pete, of like a box to box midfielder that loves to shuttle backwards and forwards, maybe like Wijnaldum did. Maybe there's less tendency to overexert yourself. There are loads of midfielders, like your Frank Lampards and, like even in the past, like Zinedine Zidane's who would just shuttle through matches. They're not pulling in high intensity sprints, which is maybe what an attacking midfielder will do. But 2 games, 2 wins, 2 roughly 75, 80-minute games from Keita are the signs pointing towards perhaps a resurgence.
Let's not get carried away now. We know he could drop a slightest flick next week. So, no, I think you've got to give him credit. He's taken on a different role this season, and he's not played amazing. He's not been like a 9 out of 10 performer, but he's put in a good shift in both games. And you'd say it's your sort of 7 out of 10 shift, which is, we'll take that at the minute. We're just coming up to speed. Obviously, we've got people coming back. So are we going to see him week in, week out anyway? Because realistically, we know the midfield 3 should be Fab, Hendo and Thiago. But in saying that, you've got to give Keita credit. He has taken on a different role so far this season. He's not gunning backwards and forwards and doing that high intensity stuff. He seems to just be doing the simple things well, getting the ball, recycling it quickly, and he's been really good at winning the ball back as well. So I've been impressed with that. I think in terms of his fitness, they spent a lot of time last season getting him conditioned more physically so he can withstand the demands of the Premiership, and maybe we're seeing the rewards of that. We've heard it with players in the past, like Daniel Sturridge. They have their own training regime to keep their fitness going. And I think Keita was the same last year. And I think without getting too carried away, look, we're 2 games in. He could split a toenail next week and be out for 6 months. But it looks a different sort of, his physique looks different. He looks to be more comfortable moving. It's not all rushed and everything. So far, got to give him credit. But are we going to see him in our starting midfield every week? I don't think so. So I think he will be given more time to rest as the others come in. And then hopefully we see a more fit Naby Keita throughout the season and be able to call on him whenever we want.
Yeah, and just for those who are just tuning in right now, we did have a bit of a discussion about how Burnley did go long, and maybe Chelsea with their new striker in Lukaku might be able to exploit any of those, potential aerial dangers that might be something. I don't know if we have any weaknesses in our defense with regards to aerial balls or whatnot. We've got Rahul here saying that still finding ourselves defensively, which is expected. And then we've also got Styles here saying Lukaku battle would be great, but I think real Chelsea threat will be looking to get in behind our fullbacks. It's just that idea of, are they going to play over the top? Or, we did see as well Trent being a little bit more inverted, something we'll bring up later on in the show. And that leaves a lot of gaps in behind the fullbacks. So there are some questions, obviously, with regards to what our defense is going to have to deal with on the weekend. But I do want to get back to the Naby Keita question. Nick, you impressed with him or what?
He's going about his business, man. Like, I don't want to say he's doing the Wijnaldum role of doing his job and not being noticed. He's just doing things and not being noticed as much, which is what you sort of expect from a midfielder from time to time. But I know we look at him and say he came in on not huge dollars, but big enough to warrant a bit more of a response a couple of seasons ago. He's had his injuries. He's had his fitness issues. I get that. He's scored some good goals for us. But I don't want to say he has done something that's beyond comprehension in the last couple of games, but consistency will get him there. If he keeps going at it, he'll keep increasing his performances. Who he plays with in the midfield, I think also helps him a lot as well. He started with Chamberlain and Milner the other week. On the weekend, he started with Henderson and Elliott. So I don't know if you can read too much into that, but just in saying that, like if he's been the only midfielder not to be changed between two games, that to me says Klopp's looking at maybe keeping him in, if not every game, at least consistently, he might give him a rest every now and again. But then who partners him? Fabinho and Henderson? Do you have Thiago and Henderson? Is it going to be Henderson and, Thiago and Fabinho with Keita? Like, I don't know where he actually fits in all of that at the moment. But for the role so far, he's doing his job. He's losing possession every now and again. He is trying to maybe take on a player or two, but he's getting his passes out there. He's getting his touches. He's looking to get involved. I don't know, man. You can't really say too much about it at the moment.
There was an interesting comment there from Styles saying, the new role for him suits high press and taking up space in tight pockets, looking fresh. That's kind of something we'll bring out before. Maybe it's just a different style in the way that he's being asked to play. It might suit him. It might suit him to do those shuttles like maybe what Ginny was doing. And again, it's not to say he's doing the exact Ginny role, but this is an interesting one from, basically from our own blood, essentially. Keita, 5 out of 10 against Norwich, 6 against Burnley. Pete,
I can't hold it anymore. I can't. Now, look, I actually think it was better against Norwich than Burnley, but I'm going to jump in. I can't. So Gini Wijnaldum used to get slated for these performances that Naby Keita's played, yeah? For me, when Harvey Elliott jumps in as 18 years old on a home debut and outperforms you, I think that's also something there to be looked at. I also think if Curtis Jones played the same game that Naby Keita played, I think he gets slated completely. What annoys me just a little bit, and I want him to succeed because he wears the shirt, and I think as the season progresses, he will get better. But what I really need to... and then he needs to do more. I just think he needs to do more because our fans want him to succeed so bad because we paid the 60 million, we waited the 6 months and all that stuff that was there. I think anything he does, we overdo and we overhype. And it's, did you see that pass he did? And what a turn! Wow, it's just like okay, but Harvey Elliott did 42 of those turns and thread more needles than he did, and whatever it was. I think as good as Naby Keita can potentially be, I think right now he needs to do a lot more to deserve some of the praise that he's getting.
There's something that I wanted to ask very quickly, and especially because we've got the lads from the Red Sea podcast on. I'm sure it's SS and perhaps Thiago's father as well. Both of them actually went to the game together, if I'm not mistaken. We just wanted to ask the question for anybody in the comments, by the way. You feel free to comment and respond to this. If you were at the game, if you heard specific streams of the game, or if you were, or maybe if it's BT compared to Sky or whatever. Here in Australia, I don't know. I just want to go to you quickly, Steve. What did the atmosphere sound like to you?
It sounded flat in comparison to what I was expecting. Now, you just mentioned there, was it on the Australian feed? I actually watched it on BT Sports, and it sounded not flat, but really quiet in comparison to what I expected. I expected first time Anfield's been full for 18 months since the Atletico Madrid game. Yes, people say about the lunchtime kickoff affects the atmosphere, but when you haven't had a packed Anfield for 18 months and it's the first time everyone can get in there, I expected it to be like the atmosphere of a European sort of knockout game. And I expected it to be rocking from half an hour before kickoff right the way through until the end of the game and long beyond that. But it sounded really flat on TV. And I don't know if that was the case, because sometimes I've watched games and it's as if the mics have been turned down on the crowd. But you'd think for the first game back, they'd have sort of really want to sort of expose that and show how good it was. But it just sounded really flat. Just a comment there on the screen, which I'm assuming is Southern Scouser saying, "You Never Walk Alone" brought a tear to his eye. And don't get me wrong, that was brilliant. You'll Never Walk Alone was really good. But then when the game started and it dropped off, and there were periods of silence, and you could hear the Burnley fans more. And that just surprised me. And now, who knows? Was it Southern Scouser can probably answer this for us, whether it was like that in the ground, or is it just us seeing that on the TV?
Yeah, because we had Optus Sport, right? We had Optus Sport footage, and you said you watched the PT.
Yeah.
Optus Sport, like I said, then You'll Never Walk Alone was amazing. I actually, tears, my partner was laughing at me because I was crying, and she's like, "What's wrong with you?" But it's just like you would never, it's hard, you can't understand that. But I got upset, like emotional as well. Then, as you said, when the game was on, I can hear them going, "Shh," the Burnley fans and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know, a little bit disappointing, to be honest.
Cooks you. It cooks you when you hear the opposition and they're louder than you. It doesn't matter what team you follow. It doesn't matter where you go. The home team should always be louder than the opposition. At least be on.
Unless you're an Arsenal fan.
Yeah, then you're going to a library effectively. But there used to be this meme. There used to be a meme years ago, and it was, oh yeah, that great Anfield atmosphere. What will you go there and they sing "You'll Never Walk Alone" before kickoff and at full time, and that's it. Like, it sort of became a bit of a meme. But that's Premier League. European nights, you guys, you've probably experienced some yourselves. I've never have. I've only experienced it through TV and audio. But a European night is very, very different to a Premier League match with Liverpool fans. The European night, they're hounding, they're all over you, 90 minutes, 100, 120, go on to penalties, whatever it is. They're on top of you. Premier League, like Steve said, 12:30 kickoff, like lunchtime kickoff. It is a very more subdued type of crowd, and because you're the first game, you sort of maybe go in not nervous, but you're like, let's not overdo it in case we might end up looking like fools. I don't know, maybe that's a dumb comment. I'll put my hand up. Yeah, it probably is a dumb comment. But the later the day goes, the more into it you become. Burnley coming to Anfield, probably not a big game. Not a game where you want the fans to say, yeah, you know what, we're going to absolutely get bang on top of you and you are not going to be able to get a peep out. If it was someone else, if this was Chelsea or United or a City, our crowd is going gangbusters. But as Steve said as well, first game in who knows how long now. Atletico Madrid was the last game, and that was in the Champions League. So you would have actually thought that would have been absolutely buzzing, singing songs of players, singing old songs, new songs. Just, hey man, we've got 55,000 fans back in here again after how many years? One of the most famous sporting grounds in the whole world, and you guys are all sitting here just being all nice, like your best library impersonation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's interesting as I get KT here. Is you shouldn't expect a European night atmosphere during a 12:30 match. And again, that was something that Steve was bringing up. I mean, it's a 12:30 game. Is that enough of an excuse for it? But I also think I hear this discussed by Scousers, who go to the game week in, week out a lot. And it's a combination of both of these things. I think, first of all, You Never Walk Alone is always going to be big and it's always going to be imposing. I think what ends up happening there, and me and you have experienced this as well, Pete, there is also a degree of, if the crowd's really excited, because this happened for Manchester United, Pete. I remember this. If the crowd's really excited for a game, they kind of tend to get quiet because they want to watch. They literally just want to watch the game. And maybe there was a degree of that. As soon as the game starts, they're just kind of like, oh my God, I'm watching this in person again. This is all I want to lap up. I haven't been able to see them in the flesh for so long. And then someone taps them on the shoulder like, bro, you got to sing. I was like, oh yeah. And that's maybe why we heard intermittent singing throughout the match. I'm not sure. But I don't have too much of an issue with it. Home game against Burnley. I think in the context of this is what Nick and Steve were saying. If in the context of this is the first game for a long time, it's kind of like, oh, could it have been even bigger? But there's an interesting comment that we just, I think, that's what we're just seeing there from KT. Hopefully, it's going to be much bigger and we can impose ourselves more on a team like Chelsea. I do want to go through a bit of the some of the match action. Let's just say, obviously, we've got the goal, and it's something that we were both talking about, Pete, which was the fast counters, and we saw something from where's our friend here. We actually had Steve gave us this little funny little name for him. But it's Simica strikes again. That was our first goal. It is Diogo Jota again, but it comes off a quick counter. For those of you who want to watch the training ground, if you ever want to know how a match is going to go, just tune into the training ground. We'll just let you know in advance. You can put there's going to be some weird, what do you call them? Exotics in the betting, in some of the betting markets. Liverpool to score from a counter from an overzealous Burnley attack. And there it is. Burnley think they're going to get a penalty, and within seconds, Liverpool, with Jordan Henderson, he crossfield switch. Naby Keita does something really good, which is try and run at the defense, and then he just lays it off for Tsimikas. Another thing we talked about, Tsimikas with his futsal impression, he puts his studs on the ball, nice and composed cross from deep, and there's Jota getting in. Pete, the training ground, at doing its work once again.
Yeah. So all those hours of preps actually, turned out to be okay for us. And then, yeah, look, I'm not going to say we're always right, but 10 out of 9 times we're right. So,
10 out of 9.
Yeah.
That means we're right about something that we don't even know yet.
It just happens. It just happens. We don't mean it, but it happens. No, look, it was beautiful to see Tsimikas assist, because he's deserved that assist, I think, with the way his performance has been in preseason, and obviously last week against Norwich. Another top performance from him. Another top performance from him. It's just, he hasn't done much wrong. And I know we're used to seeing, the Energizer Bunny at the back go up and down, up and down, up and down. But I mean, with someone with Simikas's technical ability to find a player in the box and to pose that attacking threat. And we did see he has got pace. There was that moment there that was a lost cause, but he continued to chase it. And he ended up getting much closer to the ball and keeping it in than everyone thought he would. It was more closer towards the end of the match. And then speaking of the end of the match, we saw him wrestle, as Jurgen Klopp said, 3 players on his own to try and keep that ball. And then the Klopp and the whole Anfield kind of just rose to their feet and gave him a standing ovation. I think that he's done, and sorry, SS, but at the end of the day, for me, he's done enough to keep his spot against Chelsea. That's it.
I love this. I love the time he rolled over the ball. I think he's probably he did his best James Milner impression there, Steve, where I think he's down near Klopp. And I was actually looking at Klopp, wanting to see him do something mad and German, like what he did in his memes where they've got him for Borussia Dortmund. But I think it's Tsimikas goes to the ground and he just belly flops onto the ball. And it's that tenacity what a dream debut. That you could not have asked for a better debut if you're Kostas Tsimikas. I mean, other than I'm thinking about Moreno when he scored that John Arne Riise style goal. I don't think that. Sorry,
Albert Riera as well.
Yeah,
but Moreno. Yeah, Moreno was away from home, but man, I mean, Tsimikas, Steve, you couldn't have asked for a better home debut. And then he's done that belly flop, face plant, control of the ball, then gives it back to Van Dijk. It was brilliant.
Yeah, no, and he's been quality throughout pre-season. We've called it every sort of time we spoke, and then the first 2 games of the season. Obviously, he had his moment against Norwich where he started to tire towards the end, but I think he had a good game there, and I think he played really well against Burnley this week. That moment where he sort of flopped on the ball, and then obviously he sort of got up, fought 3 players and came away with the ball, and the crowd went wild for it. It sort of reminded me of the moment where Andy Robertson but had the moment against Man City where he just went on a mad running spree trying to chase everyone down. He closed about 3 defenders down and then went and closed Ederson down. And again, Anfield went mad for it. And I think that's the moment there where you see that he's been accepted sort of as a Liverpool player. I think from his performances the last couple of weeks and pre-season, but then that moment there, the crowd gave him that appreciation, and he probably now feels accepted as a Liverpool player because obviously he didn't have the greatest of opportunities last year. And he's a great option to have. I mean, yeah, realistically, Robbo's going to come back in, but the biggest compliment you can give to him is when Robertson's not playing, we haven't essentially missed him. It hasn't changed our style of play. Tsimikas can just fit in and carry on where Robbo left off, and that's a great option to have, and hopefully it means we can rest Robbo a bit more than we have done in previous seasons.
Now I'm gonna get excommunicated from Greece here, and I'll probably be it'll be done by Pete Kofinas himself. But I don't mind. I don't mind if Robbo comes back for Chelsea. But I do want to open this up into the greater forum for those of you watching us. Give us a comment. Would you bring back Robbo in for Chelsea? And I want to ask you that, Nick. Is it kind of farewell Tsimikas here? If we're in this situation where obviously Robbo is fit and firing again. Would you bring in Andy Robertson for Chelsea?
I I don't know. I don't think it's farewell to Tsimikas. And by the way, can someone at Anfield please get this man a strong Greek coffee, please? I saw someone commented in our chat. I think he was. The bloke looks like he hasn't had a coffee in days. He's got the biggest bags under his eyes, man. But he runs hard. Maybe that might give him a bit more of a energy boost. Bring Robbo back for us against Chelsea. That's an interesting one there because depending on, I think, who Chelsea play in their lineup, that's probably what's going to dictate. I mean, we've seen
It'll be Reece James. It'll be Reece James in that position that will he has to worry about. Yeah.
So in terms of someone who's got the experience against playing someone like Chelsea, yes, Robbo does. Is he going to be fit? Is his ankle going to be okay? Like if Robbo's at like 75, 80% and he can give you like a decent performance, is that good enough? Do we want a decent performance or do we want a proper Andy Robbo performance? Because you can't do decent against Chelsea, not the way they're being pumped up at the moment. And I get why they are, and it's within good reason. But let's be real here. When it comes to us, they got lucky last season. I'll say they got lucky. No crowds. We're in a slump. You know what? Let's just give them that one there. But again, coming back to Anfield at a full Anfield against the Chelsea now, I don't know, man. I would be hesitant. It wouldn't be far beyond the reaches of what Klopp does, because he does do some mad things every now and again. And I think you boys pointed it out. What would it show to Tsimikas now if he just says, okay, well, you've had your 2 games, or he was injured, now he's back, and off to the bench you go again? That shoots a player's confidence. But at the same time, when someone is trying to get into a stride and they're trying to better themselves, to take him back out of it straight away. But again, is Tsimikas equipped enough to battle with Reece James on the pitch as well?
Well, we've got Hector here saying Tsimikas needs to keep his momentum going. That's my point of view, Pete. In and amongst all of this, what are we saying? Would you bring back?
I mean, I'm going to try to take off my my bias hat and try to put on my coaching hat for a second. In terms of experience for the magnitude of this game that can potentially end up being towards the end of the year as a title race, because I do think Chelsea are solid favourites, to be honest. Yeah, in terms of experience, you've got to bring Robbo in to deal with it. To deal with that, the Anfield crowd obviously being on top of you like a blanket, to ride the wave that obviously Chelsea will come and attack after attack. And Robbo's kind of been there, done that in terms of the big games for Liverpool Football Club. So I don't think a moment will get to him. Whereas, Tsimikas, fitness-wise, he won't do the dirty work for 90 minutes, and maybe one lapse of concentration will be enough for him to concede. But at the same time, I don't want a Jota situation where we play Robbo because it's Robbo and he's at, as Nick said earlier, let's say 75, 80%, and then we lose Robbo for another 6 to 8 weeks because they're hounding that side. I watched the Arsenal match this morning and they really favour that right side. So I'm not too sure. Like, it's for me, obviously the medical department and Klopp have to make this terrible decision, but I'm sure whoever is going to play obviously is the right choice because that's what they think. For me, again, if Robbo is 100% fit, you've got to play him purely because of the moment. And like I said, I had to take some hats off, but I'm going to take that hat off again and put this one on again and say, no, but Tsimikas has to play.
You say that with a Greek coffee in hand.
Hell out here.
And of course, it will be a full stadium, as Chris so kindly reminds us. Perhaps other teams aren't as good at it as we saw with Manchester City over the weekend.
Whoops.
My goodness, that's what £100 million Jack Grealish still can't fill seats, put bums on seats. That was the first goal. I mean, obviously Tsimikas plays a big role in that. I also thought Naby Keita was pretty good for that. It's very, very simple what he did, but it was really good to see. Elliott wasn't involved too much. I think he may have been actually in the build-up because it's actually Mo Salah that gets the ball out. It's a run from Elliott, and then he plays it to Henderson over to Keita in that area. So it was really good to see the midfield kind of combining. But then we've got the second goal, and it's something I just want to bring up. It's something we brought up in the pre-show. Is that a surprise there, Pete? Talking about inverted fullbacks. Obviously, we talked about it with regards to defensive shape. But it's actually something I've brought up a few times, especially towards the end of last season when Liverpool started to get on a bit of a run. What they were doing was, especially because we had to monitor the fitness of Trent, and I'm not sure if it is specifically to do with the monitoring of fitness, but I saw we were being a bit smarter. Trent has the ability to play in midfield, And we even talked about this, Pete, where we said he's almost like an RDM, a right defensive midfielder. It's kind of like an augmented fullback / midfielder. He doesn't really need to be doing the kind of shuttle runs that Robertson does, where he finds himself on the goal line or the byline cutting it back. There are 3 instances where Trent Alexander-Arnold is around the penalty box, just outside it. And on those 3 occasions, on the first one, we score. And Steve, you were saying you saw him lingering in that area when Jota scores his header. Is that correct?
Yeah, as Jota makes the header, Trent is literally approaching the edge of the D. He's probably about a metre or 2 away from it, and he's just approaching, coming in centrally, similar to that position where he picked up the ball for the second goal. So it's just something I clocked on that first goal. And then obviously I was, because I watched your training ground episode, and then I thought, I just kept an eye on where the fullbacks were, and Trent just kept finding himself in that little pocket.
And then, so the second time we see it is actually there's a really good chance where Trent picks up the ball in midfield and he plays Jota's feet. Jota does this unbelievable turn and plays Mane in, and I think Mane's slide tackle shots either at the keeper or over the bar. So that was the second time. So we're threatening. First time he's there. Second time he's there and he creates a chance. Third time, what do we see, Pete? We see something that you tweeted about, which was this gorgeous little pass. But again, Trent Alexander-Arnold, inverted, playing almost as a midfielder.
Yeah, look, remember, 10 out of 9 times, George. The
quick maths.
Look, we could do a separate show on how much we love Alexander-Arnold. I mean, he's 22 years old, and there isn't a thing he can do, like he can't do, without the ball. It's unbelievable. His passing range, his technique, everything. For me, he's the complete kind of footballer. But that little dink, to know that he's running towards the ball, into that space that was created there, to know that there's that free player off his shoulder. So I'm obviously, I might have to go look back at the goal, but he's probably had a quick check before he's actually made the run to know that Mane is central. And then just to enter that space and just to guide that ball with a little bit of curl. Oh, I mean, yeah, Mane scored it and it was right. And, great, he scored, woohoo. But the whole time I was just saying, oh, my God, Trent. I mean, by the time Mane finished celebrating and the kickoff happened again to continue the game, it was, for me, I was still talking about Trent.
And it's interesting that as you're mentioning all of that, we do have Southern Scouser SS saying here, Trent, Salah and Elliott down the right was fire. It's actually Van Dijk hits the ball down, and it's actually Harvey Elliott that's playing on the right wing there. He chests the ball down, and it's him who plays into Trent, who's now underlapping, essentially. And that's something that Elliott on the right-hand side can do for you. It's almost, I mean, even though we were playing the 4-3-3, and this is something I want to get into in the next section. Actually, I might cheat and get there right now. What we did see was Elliott almost playing as a roaming attacking midfielder, and stuff like that when he is kind of pulling out of position. It allows players like Trent to kind of pick up these other positions, and to have this inverted fullback. I mean, like you said, Pete, in defense, it guards against the counterattack. In attack, we've basically got like a Steven Gerrard kind of playing in that RCM role, which is what we've wanted from Trent ever since he started his career. And everyone asks him, "Do you want to move into midfield?" He's like, "I'm pretty happy at right back." Well, it also helps if you're being asked to play like almost like a pseudo center midfield. I mean, why would you go into midfield when you can kind of make the best of both worlds, Pete?
I really love what Klopp's doing here. I really do. And obviously he's picked his player, because you don't see Tsimikas or Robertson doing it so much. I mean, Robert, we can't really make a comment just yet. But clearly with Tsimikas, he's told him, keep your width and do what you do, run up, cross, obviously get an assist, and then we'll bid you farewell when Robbo's fit. But it's with Trent, because he's so technically good, and like I said, he's got a range of passes. If him in the midfield, like we've seen that dink there, just the way he's just curved it with that little chip into the perfect area. And Mane couldn't have missed this one. I know he missed quite a few in that game and in past couple of games, but there's no way you can miss that because the ball was just so perfect. The ball told him what to do when he put him in there. It was just, and what we're seeing the way the cross-field switches to Tsimikas in the space, and it's just sickening to watch.
Absolutely. And it's kind of what Styles is saying there. Harvey and Salah sitting wide to allow Trent to take up that pocket inside. Another thing I noticed, by the way, in a couple of these movements, what you see is, especially when Harvey gets the ball out on the right, he's in that right wing back position that people are used to seeing Trent in. And then Trent is inside. You can see the defenders of Burnley in their blocks of 4-4-2 going, who do we go to? If you guys watch, and we're going to bring this up again on the training ground, so we'll have only screenshots to show you. We can't show you the video, but I'll show you a screenshot of a Burnley defender literally shitting himself going, what do I do here? And before you know it, Liverpool have either created a chance, or they've perhaps scored from the chance. And that's where I just want to go on to. That's why I said I was cheating, going into that other section where we're talking about Harvey Elliott. I mean, what a game from Harvey Elliott. And there's something I just want to ask you, Nick. It's something, again, we brought up in the training ground. I think Pete was maybe mouthing that on the other side of Australia there. It's this idea that we're playing 4-3-3, but we have this midfielder capable of breaking from midfield, going into pockets. We saw Harvey Elliott taking up those positions as well. I mean, did he feel like he was in a 4-3-3, or do you reckon there was also maybe a comment from Klopp saying, mate, if you want to be the one in the 4-2-3, not the one, but the middle, the cam in the 4-2-3-1, go ahead and kind of make those runs, and Cater and Henderson can always cover you back there, because it's also great that Jordan Henderson loves that right-hand side of the field. They almost switched from a 3, if you guys can see that, into the 2, and then Elliott's up here. What did it look like to you, Nick?
I'm pretty sure I made a comment at one point saying, like, look at Henderson and Cater covering their midfield while Trent is up, or rather carrying that defensive position while Trent is up alongside Salah or Elliott or whoever would have been on that side there. So it was nice to see him venturing up. If he's been given the license by Klopp to say, look, if you see a gap, if you see an opening, go take it. So long as the guys that are in front of him and beside him know that when he's venturing forward, that everyone else needs to be on their game and say, oh, crap, I need to drop back a little bit because he's going forward. Whether that stops an attack happening, I'm not too sure, because you could have a player like Jota or Mane who's going in for a cross, and Trent maybe will do something a little bit different. But we saw him going so up close, because even for that Salah goal that was disallowed for offside, he was way up alongside Elliott. So the ball came across. Elliott, nice little pass to Salah, good finish, offside though, but he was right next to him in that, right-sided midfield position. So if he's been given the license to go forward, then, man, by all means, take it. So long as Henderson or Keita or whoever who are going to be behind him, they'll drop back and they'll be able to cover the spaces, because the last thing you want is to have your fullback who bombs up and down those wings every single minute of the game, or every single minute, 10 out of 9 times, running up and down and being caught out of possession, because that's the last thing you want to do if you're going to be playing not as with wing backs, but with fullbacks who are just going and lapping the opposition and lapping your players as well. You don't want to be caught out over the top. You don't want to have that happen against Chelsea and a ball goes over the top and, Reece James is through, or what's his name, Pulisic is through, or whoever, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to have those situations.
I want to ask you, Steve, very quickly, as there was one thing I also wanted to bring up with regards to the training ground. My God, Pete, our heads are getting so huge. We were talking actually about whenever there's going to be when there's a player in the box, we actually talked about, and I think we flirted with the idea of there being a late run to the far post, but I think I brought up that Mo Salah actually got those positions previously when we did have Coutinho, an attacking midfielder, playing a little bit deep because he could make those passes. I mean, what we see for that Elliott of the offside goal is Mo Salah is absolutely in acres of space, because he's the one that's gone, I'm seeing a gap here. And instead of Elliott kind of bombing on like we saw him playing wider right, it's like they've got that great relationship already. I do it the father and son. I call it the father and son, with Salah kind of, holding his hand a little bit. But we do have that instance where Salah is far right, completely unmarked, and such a lovely finish, such a pity that it ended up not being a goal for us. I just wanted to ask you, Steve, the way in which Harvey Elliott was given, how many, did he play the full 90? He plays the full 90, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Plays 90 minutes. Now, we're obviously not going to see him start against Chelsea. He could obviously be on the bench and do something for us. It's probably going to be your stock standard Klopp, like he does against Man City, where he just goes for his tried and tested. But what type of games do you imagine seeing Harvey Elliott play from here on out, given the fact he just got 90? He didn't get 85, didn't get 80. He's got the 90 in that game. Klopp has gone, you're playing the whole game. You are a starting first-team player for me.
I think he's got to be given opportunities in these games where teams play like Burnley and they're just going to put two banks of fives. When we're attacking, they just put everyone behind the ball. And he gives us that ability to break through those two banks. Like, the fact that that goal was disallowed is criminal. I know it was offside, I give it that, but to deprive him of that assist, I think Pete was probably creaming himself when Elliot put that ball through, because it was just unreal for someone so young to see that and try it. It's something we've missed since Coutinho was in the starting lineup, and Shaqiri did it in glimpses when he played. But Elliot can just pick tight spaces, pick that pass, and do it. So I think if you get, like, the comment that came up earlier was saying that teams at the moment are going to try and hit us and go for us, and then they're going to realize that we're going to start countering them, so they're going to end up sitting back. And I think as we come up against more of those teams, so the likes of the teams that have come up, Norwich won't do it because they don't know how to defend. They just go out and attack. But other teams who are just going to sit back and say, come on, break us down, I think Elliot is potentially perfect in them games. He might not necessarily start them all, but he's an option to come off of the bench if we're struggling to break a team down. And I think that you've got to give Klopp credit for having the faith in him to throw him in for that game, because there were different options there we could have put on, and had a couple of scary moments in the first half where I think he got closed down a bit quicker, like on the edge of our box, and got crunched. But I think 15, 20 minutes onwards, you just saw him grow and grow into that game, and he just looked comfortable. And yet you went on about him a lot in your training ground episode, so I don't think you were calling for him to start, but
no, we didn't. No.
You didn't. But you mentioned him a lot about that hole on the edge of the box, and I think it was in the first 10 minutes. There was Trent had it out wide on the right, and he was trying to put that cross in, and look who was in that hole right on the edge of the box, just to the right hand side of the D. It was Harvey Elliott. So if he'd have played in there, he's got his left foot to bend it in, which I think, George, you were talking about. So good to see. Obviously, don't expect him to start next week, but keep giving him them minutes, even if it's 10 minutes off the bench, 15 minutes off the bench. And then when a game like this Burnley one comes up again, throw him in, give him an opportunity.
I'll tell you what impressed me the most with Harvey, and I won't say anything like, because you guys have, I think, have all been spot on. I think what impressed me the most was at the start, as you mentioned, Steve, he got clattered a few times, and he got axed like in some seriously good challenges. Like there was some overly physical, some of them. And I'm sure that kind of is a segue to the next part, but they were quite overly physical on him maybe at the start because he's young and let's test him and let's see if he's got the balls to continue. But the fact that he just got up, brushed himself off, limped it off, and got on with it again. I thought that, for me, I saw that. I thought I love that more than his performance, just because it shows that the mentality side to this kid, that he's here to stay. He's here to fight and to show that he can bleed for the club if he has to.
Absolutely. And just going on what we were talking about before, closing the loop before we do get on to some comments about a couple of those Burnley challenges that were coming in. Klopp wasn't too pleased, and we're going to get on to what he was talking about in the press conference. SS here saying, good to see us trying different tactics, being more fluid. We were so predictable in that 6-game losing streak. Great to see teams like Burnley can't handle it. And I think SS there is referring to not only what we were talking about with the Trent inversion as a fullback, but also Harvey Elliott coming in and kind of playing like a cam, like a center attacking mid, but also finding that space in the hole. Again, for Trent coming in, we have Harvey Elliott all the way on the right, and they don't really know how to deal with it. So it's really good signs to see us trying these sorts of things, because we've always done decent against the top 6, but we haven't done well against the fodder last season. I'm talking about. So absolutely, it is good to see us kind of trying some new things. This is an interesting take here. Can we see Tsimikas playing left wing? I called for this last year, Pete. Do you remember me saying this?
Yeah.
For those of you who can go,
yeah.
For those of you who can remember 15 years ago, I mean, what are we talking about? 2006. Does anyone remember Aurelio and Reza starting at the same time? And you didn't know which one was left wing or left back, and they would just both be bombing crosses into the box. And I don't know, it was kind of like a double. It was like a double defense from Rafa, but it was also a double attack from Rafa. I always found that interesting. Pete, can you ever see that? Probably not.
I'd hope so. I mean, if it means to put some pressure on Mane as well to keep him on his toes for a little bit longer, I think that'll be excellent.
Absolutely. Styles really, really impressed with Trent. We had a few people saying that they preferred him as the man of the match. We actually had Chris saying here that he was the man of the match, but watching Trent play now has really found his swag. I really trust he fully trusts his game now. And that's really great, especially off last season. I think that was his wobble last season. And what a way to wobble. They downgraded him in FIFA, by the way. That's how much they didn't like his wobble. Come on, FIFA.
But what wobble?
I know, there wasn't hardly a wobble.
I'm not going to get into it here.
Man of the match from Chris Welch there. A lot of people here talking about pre-Chelsea, so I reckon we'll finish with pre-Chelsea. But before we do get to that, there is the thing that we wanted to bring up, which was the WWF style, and I say WWF because that was the greatest era of wrestling, isn't it, Pete? With we had Razor Ramon and then going into the Undertaker. We got Nick there agreeing. We're not going to talk about
DX.
wrestling here, but DX.
Please, man. Do you want to start making this a wrestling pod? Because I'm all for that, man. I can speak
We
for
might
hours
do
on
one.
that.
We should
Let's
do that.
it.
We should just chat like old school WWF style wrestling.
Just lay the smackdown.
I'm just shaking my head in shame at you lot.
Shut up, Steve.
Come on, man. It's drama for men. Come on.
It's greasy
shut
men
up.
in spandex.
Yeah, but
Have
guess
you
what?
ever-
It's real. Wrestling is real. Shut up.
You know what's great about wrestling is, have you ever seen the South Park episode where they kind of equate it to like
Yeah.
Shakespeare, and they got like playbills and everything? They're like, oh yes, who's this? Like, well, he slept with his wife, and then his wife came in, and then she did a stunner to him.
El Pollo Loco.
Shut up,
Like
Steve.
That was Kenny's character.
What type of a name is Steve anyway?
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think Steve, you were bringing it up there. Jurgen Klopp wasn't too pleased with the wrestling style of Burnley. However, we've also seen it all over the Premier League this weekend. It's an interesting debate to have. They're quote unquote letting things go, is what they're saying. And we saw Trent. I guess it was a shoulder to shoulder, and that the referee clearly does one of those. So that was shoulder to shoulder. But Manchester United concede a goal because Bruno Fernandes gets taken down around the middle of the park, and then they score immediately from that deflected shot. We're seeing the penalty scream yell against Saka. It was Chelsea against Arsenal. I don't know how. I had the prediction, Steve, that this would affect the big clubs more because the grok teams are just going to come flying in from everywhere. But I fully expect the referees to just completely go against this, like 4 or 5 games in, and then just give a shit decision. And I have a feeling it's going to be against Liverpool. Hopefully we're like 6 goals ahead so that the decision doesn't cost us at all, or Alisson saves the pen, whatever it is. But yeah, it's Jurgen Klopp's not a fan of it.
No, and I think, look, I'm all for the game to flow more because it became very stop-start, blowing a whistle on everything. But the things Burnley were getting up to, I don't see how the ref could have allowed a lot of them to go on. There's a number of things you didn't even notice at the time that I've seen clips of it on Twitter now where Joel Matip's basically, I think it's Barnes, does like a scissor kick on him and throws him to the ground. And then there's another one, the official Liverpool Twitter account tweeted one, and it's basically Van Dijk doing one of his long diagonal balls over to Salah. And then Salah tries to cut it back. And in that process, Diogo Jota just gets absolutely clattered in the box. Nothing gets said. He's not even on the ball, but the guy takes him out. And then there's another one where the defenders, or it might be their midfielder, is behind Diogo Jota. No one's on the ball. And he literally grabs him with both hands and pulls him back and makes him go
That's
flying.
called a German suplex.
Yes. Belly to
As you know, I'm not into my wrestling, so I wouldn't know the terminology.
So yeah, and you're supposed to do 3 of them in the style of Kurt Angle, of course, the only ever Olympic gold medalist to compete in the World Wrestling Federation / entertainment.
Pete, which Liverpool player would you expect to give a rock bottom to the opposition?
Van Dijk.
That's easy. Yeah, Van Dijk.
Yeah, he's the tallest one. Yeah, you just pick him up.
Yeah.
He's looking at. He's like picks him up, just boom, straight down, done, game over.
But if I was to compare any player to a wrestler, I reckon Firmino would be Eddie Guerrero.
Oh, he lies, he cheats, he steals. Now he's honest.
He
man.
would
doesn't-
be, actually, totally.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a really good segue into a question about going, which player would be which? We have a really cool question here from SS. Quick question for all 4 of us. How many world-class players do you think LFC have right now Interesting question. He says 7, and I've actually got an answer here. Chris Welch reckons 8. That's interesting. We can kind of count them out now. The starting 11 that we kind of usually expect: Salah, world class;
Yep.
Firmino,
Alisson.
world class. Oh, we're going from the back now.
Yeah,
Start
go back
with
up. Yeah.
We'll go from
Alisson.
the back. Okay.
So Trent,
Yeah.
Allison, Van Dijk, Robertson.
Yep.
So 4.
Yeah. Thiago,
Mid 5.
Fabinho,
Yep.
6.
Salah.
7.
Yep.
You guys jump in now, maybe.
At 7, I think. Look, Mane before last season's brain farts was world class. Everyone was saying he's better than Salah for a large degree. I think we still have to say that he's world class. Obviously,
There is
I
an
would say
8th.
him and. Sorry,
There is an 8th. There is an 8th.
Who?
Divock Origi.
Fuck off.
I was waiting for that. He's gone. Come on, man. I
His
was waiting for
SS's Alisson, Trent, Robbo, VVD, Fabinho, Hendo, Salah. Interesting, really interesting. We don't obviously Thiago's got to be in that list.
Surely.
Maybe in form. You know what? I have to go back to this very quickly. I don't like doing, and we just got Hector here saying Divock is a legend, no doubt, with the sweating smile emoji. But I just have to do this, and I have to put the microphone away from me with a broken freaking neck.
That's
I
right.
like one of my favorite quotes from Kurt Angle.
Because that's
With
singing
a broken
"You suck."
freaking neck.
I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. I'm just
Sorry, I had to go back to the wrestling stuff. Matip is possibly 8th. Really, really interesting. We got Chris here with his world class squad: Alisson, Arnold, Van Dijk, Robertson, Fabinho, Hendo, Thiago, Salah, and Mane.
I guess it's what you mean, what you define. I think everyone's got an opinion on what world class is. I think for me, what world class means is he can walk into any team in the world. I think that's my definition of world class. Pick any club in the world right now. Would these players start for that team? And that's my definition of world class.
Sadio Mane absolutely does. How many other left wingers out
No,
there?
I'm just saying that's my definition of what world class is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in that case, I think a lot more of our players will fit in if we go by that. I think a lot of our players would walk into other teams. The last thing that I just wanted to talk about was what we kind of expect just going into Chelsea as we start to wrap this up. There were some things going on about starting strongest 11s and whatnot against Chelsea. Here's a potential starting lineup against Chelsea. I think we're looking a little bit too far into the future. We're going to have the training ground to chat about Chelsea a little bit more. But just in the face of, again, what we were talking about at the beginning, the fact that Burnley tested us from the long ball. I mean, we're going to get into again how Chelsea approach, but they do have Lukaku. That is a completely different dimension to their game. Guys, I mean, judging by what we've seen against Burnley, we kind of covered it a little bit with the talk about Harvey Elliott. Do we get excited for Chelsea because of the potential lineup that can be chosen, Pete? I'll start with you.
I think we should definitely be excited for this Chelsea match. I actually think we can beat them too. Like I said, I watched them versus Chelsea. Yeah, they were good. I mean, versus Arsenal, sorry. Yeah, they were good. But there were moments during that match where I thought, I just know that if it was Liverpool playing, we could have hurt them in these moments or these situations that happened. I think the back four stays the same. I mean, other than potentially depending how fit Robertson is, I think that will be the only change at the back. I think Firmino starts, and I'll tell you why, on the training ground. So that way you have to jump and watch because, remember, 10 out of 9 times we're correct. And I think the midfield, Fabinho, Henderson, guaranteed will start. Or just for me, I can't pick who that third one's going to be. And I do have a feeling it will be Keita.
Steve?
Yeah, really looking forward to it. It's going to be our first proper big test. Pete just mentioned there he thinks Firmino will come in. And again, I won't go into much detail about it, but I think I agree on that one. I think he's more suited to this Chelsea game and how Chelsea set up and how we can sort of expose some weaknesses there. Nothing against Jota, but I think Firmino comes back in and the rest picks itself. Robbo coming in, I think, and then your midfield three is Hendo, has to be in there. And then if Fabinho, I'm assuming, will be back. And then, like you say, who's that? Who's the third man? Is it Naby Keita? Is it Thiago? Or is it the James Milner?
Oh, fuck.
We're going to see James Milner, Nick. I can see you shying away from the camera.
No. I know Klopp loves this. Play the strong Englishman for the English teams and the top four and all that sort of stuff. Man, throw that out the window, man. Just get rid. No, you play. You play the players that you know are going to get your job done. You know you're going to be playing against a Mason Mount, a Kai Havertz, a Lukaku as well. You're going to be playing against all these types of players, and you're going to be telling me you want to play James Milner in the midfield instead of like a Fabinho. I get he's been out because of bereavement leave and all that sort of stuff, and I hope he's back and fit, and his mindset is ready to rock and roll. But man, you cannot be playing Milner, 35 years old, against the Chelsea team full of like relative youngsters to run at and hustle for a whole 90 minutes. Yeah, for real. Yeah, Elmo says he's like Milner is a scrapper to bring on. 10 minutes, yeah, bring him on. Let him just hassle some of the opposition. Let him get in there. Let him German suplex someone 3 times and get away with it because it is James effing Milner. You know what I mean? Let's see that happen instead. I want to see Fabinho in the middle of the pitch. Henderson can keep his position. He's the captain. He's done well against Chelsea relatively. Again, the players in that team as well, he's played against them many a time. And then you can also say, you know what? Do you bring in Thiago to dictate like we saw when we went away when he first debuted? Or do you bring someone who's a bit more solid in terms of not as a creative player like Thiago is, but someone to shore up that midfield?
I'll make a statement. I'll make a comment then. I'll make my decision. I think Keita starts. And for me, with Henderson going off Styles' message there, I think Henderson is the one that could be replaced by Thiago that will come on and dictate their play or try and either influence the game either way. But I think Keita starts, and for me, it'll be the one that will be season-defining for him, almost career-defining for him, because this is that match. He's played 3 games. This will be his 3rd game in a row. We've never seen that in his history of being alive. It's just that for me, and it's against Chelsea again, a team that's probably going to be all the way to the end for that title with us and Manchester City. And I think that this is actually a huge moment and a good test for him to play.
And there's actually one more thing before we wrap up that I completely forgot, because I didn't know that it was kind of confirmed news, but it is being confirmed by all the major sources. We've got
Big Shaq.
We've got some. Yeah, Shaqiri. And it's kind of, again, Pete, as a little bit serendipitous as we were, delving into the nostalgia, talking about our time in Liverpool when we watched Shaqiri score those 2 goals at Old Trafford. You were in the Kop, you smashed your leg. A bit of your toenail is still on the Kop, I'm sure, wedged somewhere in between a seat somewhere. We've got Shaqiri leaving, and we've got SS saying here, thoughts on Shaqiri going to Lyon? Done deal, 10 million. Really, really great player. I want to go right back to you here, Nick. Great player for Liverpool. I'm not sure what amount we got him for. Actually, you might be able to. I don't know if you can get that for us, or if anyone remembers off the top. But
13
leaving, what
mil,
is he?
I think.
It
was it 13?
12 to 13 mil from Stoke on relegation, 15 at the max, I think it was. And you know what? Big Shaq's done all right for us. I was actually excited when he came because I was a fan of him when he was at Bayern. Then when he went to Stoke, I'm just like, how does a guy like Shaqiri go from Bayern Munich to Stoke?
Into Milan.
Inter as well.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. I knew there was a club in between. I'm like, how the hell does he go from that T club to playing rainy Mondays in Stoke? Why would you? But of course, there was decent players around there. Arnautovic, they had a good partnership together, and just that deal in itself was very Klopp-esque. Find a player who is good enough to play the system that he wants to be, as skillful as he needs him to be, get him on a cheap, bring him over for a couple of seasons, have him do a job. And let's not forget, he scored 2 goals against United to win that game 3-1 a couple of seasons ago at Anfield. And then he's also had a big performance in that Champions League semi against Barcelona with that cross to help Wijnaldum get that 3rd goal, whatever it was. So he's had some big moments for us. Not the biggest loss. He did provide us with some goods, but I think now I saw a tweet earlier on, Elliot might be Yeah. United the basket. Yeah, yeah. There you go. There's 2 games I can think of. Apart from that, whatever. I scored a good first goal in preseason against Man United as well. Scissor kick. The Shaqiri always manages to score some weird overhead goals for some reason. No idea why. And we have younger players coming in who can play that role and who are of a similar build. Obviously, they're not built like brick shit houses like Shaqiri. They don't have calves, the size of Arnold Schwarzenegger's biceps. But in saying that, someone like a Elliott or a Jones who is creative and nifty on the ball, who has low center of gravity, which is what I would probably like an Elliott to be. I think it's not a bad idea because you can bring Elliott into the squad and bloody min now, and he's only 18 years old, so he's got a long way to go.
And I love that. As I was talking about the power cube leaving, we've got here is always a square peg in a round hole. I think kind of not just in terms of stature, literally, even in terms of the idiom, the phrase of putting a square peg in a round hole. There's something I just want to maybe open up to the whole forum, but I'll ask you first, Steve. Shaqiri leaves now. We've got 9.5 mil. I think that says that we're currently now in profit in this window. Now, the suggestion was always from Liverpool, we need to sell to buy, but it doesn't detract from the fact that there were all these comments, especially from trusted sources that Klopp does have money to spend. So that suggests if we've made all our money back, especially with the sale of Shaqiri, that we still have a transfer that we can possibly allocate some funds to. Do you think losing Shaqiri warrants the need for another player? Or have you seen enough from perhaps a Harvey Elliott to suggest that Shaqiri out, Elliott in, and then the rest of the squad stays the same?
The whole Elliott Shaqiri thing I agree with. Elliott can do the role that Shaqiri's done and probably more so. So we need to sort of thin our squad a bit, but I still think we need to sign someone to go and give more competition in that front three, especially with the African nations coming up. So I still think we need to sign someone, but I actually don't think we're going to, unless we go out and sell Origi in the next week or so, and maybe a couple of other fringe players. I just can't see us sign anyone because I think we've already got our quota of overseas players in the squad. We'd need to, and registering Adrian is a bizarre one for me. We gave him a new contract, and then you got 2 goalkeepers set on the bench at the weekend. So Adrian has taken up one of them slots for a non-homegrown player. So for us to go out and buy someone, unless they're homegrown, we're going to have to free up some spaces by getting rid of people. So I just can't see it happening. But I think we do need to sign someone, but we'll see what happens.
It's a really interesting point you bring that up there about the whole homegrown thing. A lot of the people in the comments have actually someone in the comments has brought up the whole homegrown quota as well. Pete, do you reckon? I mean, it's. I think we all probably think along the same lines. Elliott does replace Shaqiri, and again, we just saw that little pass he played through for Salah. It was very reminiscent of Shaqiri to Jota in the Champions. It was the Champions League. So we've replaced him, so to speak, but Shaq also provided cover for the front three. Do we need another player? I mean, we've got Hector here asking us. He's going to miss Shorty Shaq, the power cube. Do we need to make another signing?
Yes, I think we do need to make another signing. I mean, we do have Minamino that we tend to forget about that can also jump in and help in that front three area, which we've seen how electric and sharp he was in preseason. And Klopp actually just recently came out and mentioned how good he's looking at training, saying it's the best he's looked since he signed for the club. I mean, that could be positive, or it could be just Klopp trying to keep morale high. I mean, we don't know really. But I think I read before with all the outings of this transfer window, we've made something like £45 million of transfer money. So for me, we're kind of a club that has to obviously sell to buy. Well, there's $45 million right there to go and lump on an attacker for us, because I do think we definitely need to sign someone in the front three.
Absolutely. And it says here, Camavinga available. I'm assuming that's 33.5. Seems a no-brainer. I think we need a forward, though. Nick, very quickly as we wrap up here. 35 mil is what he's actually said there. Just that there's the correction there, 35 mil. But yeah, it's kind of, again, with Harvey, we've got that midfield. Sorry, there's a fly here. If you see me flapping around, it's because there's a fly in front of me. It's getting annoying. Obviously, Elliott is kind of providing a case. His providing a case for us not to sign a midfielder, would you think that if we were to sign anyone, it would be a forward?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of zoned out for a minute there, probably trying to find the mosquito in this room from yesterday that bit my hand. But
Dude, I think it was my mosquito going into your room.
probably
I was doing the same thing.
Moved away.
While I was talking, I'm like, what are you bloody doing?
SS, Taki. We've got, I don't know if he means like tiki-taki. I don't know if he means Minamino, but we do have Minamino, and another player who can play that forward line and maybe drift from midfield. Peter would have more information on that because I trust his tactical awareness and his judgment on that front there. But yeah, if we were to get another player in, I don't know, man. Mane and Salah will be off to the Africa Cup of Nations in January, but I've just read something here from The Athletic, from James Pearce, saying that Liverpool are reluctant to let him go to play, I think, all 3 games because he'd have to come back and quarantine for like 10 days or something. So it's going to be a reduced number of games. So he won't be back it will be back quicker rather than what he would longer. So I don't know if you're going to buy someone just for that particular period, if you're really going to go in there, because if you've got Jota and Minamino who can play, and you've also got someone like, let's say he is going to throw in Tsimikas for a left wing position, he might play a single striker for a couple of games, maybe if they're trying different things in training. I don't know, weirder things have happened. But I don't know, a lot of people still say our midfield is a little bit weak. Some people say our front line is weak. If we are going to get someone, it's going to have to be a proper number 9 in terms of a replacement for a proper number 9, someone who we can whip crosses into and they're going to get to the ball every moment. It's not how we play, but instead of making plan A better, let's actually have a plan B, or at least a plan A, 0.1 or something like that.
Absolutely.
I agree with Adam, by the way. I agree with Southern Scouser here.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think the midfield's fine. I think we forget how good Jones is, and we forget how good he was for us throughout patches of the season last year. I think we're quick to sleep on Curtis Jones at the moment. But I think front 3 most definitely is where we need the whether it's a number 9, as Nick was just mentioning, or it's someone to put pressure on Mane or whatever it is. For me, I just think that we just need some backup in the front 3.
And you know what? Actually, Nick made a very good point here as we begin to but we start to actually wrap up the show. He mentioned the whole thing of will Klopp fill that hole just for the African Cup of Nations? What did we see with the centre back problem? I mean, barely went into the market, and when he did not want anyone coming in that was going to stay. Ben Davies is gone, and Kabak is gone. So when Klopp has a hole to fill, he usually tries to do it from within, maybe with youth. And if he can't physically get the youth in, then he'll try something else a little bit more, a little bit more audacious, because he doesn't like that group being disrupted. He talks about that a lot in his press conferences as well. He says, I think he talks about it with the midfielders. He has a bit of a go at poor James Pearce, who's probably the nicest guy in the virtual Zoom world, before when it was a press conference world, has a bit of a go at him, saying like, who would you sign? And by the way, it doesn't have to just be a good player. He also has to fit in with the whole group. But transfers, they go all the way up to 31st of August rather. So we won't know about what happens then, and we're always going to have a lot to talk about. There is obviously Transfer Tuesdays here on the Red Sea podcast. The lads from the UK will be looking at a lot of the transfer rumors and stuff, so you can always catch a lot of that news here. But for now, the Down Under show does need to say goodbye. We gave you a little bit of a look back on what we thought about Burnley, a little bit of a preview of Chelsea, but also just chatting about a lot of the other issues surrounding Liverpool at this moment. Obviously, Shaqiri leaving, and a little bit about, what Liverpool look like in the grand scheme of things as the Premier League is 2 games in. Remember, you can always like and subscribe on the YouTube. Please go to Red Sea Down Under on YouTube, at Red Sea Down Under if you like us, like the Aussie content, and of course, Red Sea Podcast on Twitter as well. Guys, it's been a really, really fun one here. Really want to say thank you to everybody who's been in the comments and who's been dropping us some love and, doing all sorts of funny stuff. Been loving the banter right from the start. I think it's safe to say, Pete, we've been enjoying a lot of the comments and interacting with them, especially the early bants from the COVID-free vaccine. Kate, I think that was man of the match.
Yeah, no, that's our culture, right? That's what we love to do. We love to jump on here, have a laugh with everybody, and again, try to keep the vibes positive during these difficult times for us in lockdown.
Absolutely. And we get some great support here from the watchers. Nick, Steve, Pete, it's been fantastic. Remember, everyone, guys, go to YouTube, subscribe, Red Sea Podcast, like, turn notification bells on so you get all of our shows. Pete and I are going to be back later in the week. We're going to look at Chelsea. You're going to want to see this training ground because we keep getting these things right. If you want to see literally how the game is going to go, Pete and I are going to do a full preview. We've got stats. We've got tactical analysis. We've got screenshots. My goodness, if you saw the Burnley one, you would have seen how the game was going to go. And then the Norwich game, obviously that training ground has been lost to the ages for now. But for the Chelsea one, that's going to be out on Thursday, 8 p.m. Australian time. That's around midday for the UK guys. The day before, I think it's Wednesday UK time, Wednesday 12 o'clock rather. But for the time being, this has been the lads from the Down Under show. This has been the post Burnley review of that. And I've been George. These have been the Aussie lads. See you all later.